Good evening and welcome to my channel. And I just finished part of this video. This is the second part of the video. I'm talking about the cost of living, talking about globalization as a context, talking about privatization as a context, saying cost of living has been caused by capitalism, by closing down the public sector. Capitalism means socialism should shut down. So socialism has shut down. We have capitalism, and capitalism is for the many, for the few, and not the many. The people who are actually enjoying capitalism at the moment are actually super rich. Our hope as poor people, who are actually 90% of the population now, whether you know it or not, is not important at this point. You will only realize it as time goes by. It's my responsibility to say this. Because if you work for a living, you're poor. You may be feeling good. You may be getting credit. You may be, maybe you are not yet in debt. Maybe you are living in a big house. You're paying your mortgage. You're keeping your job. You're paid 300,000, 400,000 pounds. You're doing well. Maybe you're, I mean, if you're paid 50,000, 40,000, you're doing well already. And you may think you're not poor. And people don't like to be referred to as poor. And even poor people have their dignities. And you go around telling people you're poor, it's rude. And so, but sometimes we have to really face the real world, and we can, we can keep up with the Joneses as much as we like. But there comes a time when you have to really solve real problems. You have to survive because the cost of living is very serious. And if we don't wake up from our deep sleep, we're going to be in serious, serious trouble. I've said this severally, and I will continue saying it. It's almost becoming pedantic. People are getting almost tired. I'm not worried about that because I know that not many people are watching my video. There are the few who are watching are understanding of the situation in this channel. They know that we are actually building up momentum. We are trying to build this channel, and they are understanding. If you are going to watch this video, thank you for your understanding, and thank you for subscribing. If you haven't, please subscribe and leave a comment below. Share with your friends, family. Campaign for this channel, support it, talk to it to your family friend, and tell them there is a channel there. They seem something is really interesting about it. Come and support it, especially if you think the channel is good. If you think something there's potential, if you think it has potential, yeah, why not? Participate in it. If you are, even if you don't like YouTube, even if you don't like social media, take the chance because we will be talking about the cost of living, but the cost of living is an opportunity for everyone to try and look objectively at a problem with a view to solving such a problem. The problem is humanitarian, and the solution is also humanitarian. It may feature in terms of economics, in terms of finance, in terms of social systems, in terms of politics, in terms of violence or wars in Ukraine, between Ukraine and China, and Russia. But in the end, we're talking about capitalism, which actually is a radical incident of change. We have going global with capitalism, which actually at the moment is only catering for the few and not the many. So the many are actually 90%, including the middle class. The middle class may not necessarily. I mean, if you are middle class and you are suffering from the cost of living, leave a comment below. The middle class is probably if you are earning between 50,000 pounds. I mean, if you're earning 30,000, you feel good because of credit. You can get credit and you can borrow money. You know, you don't lack anything. So, but if there is a crisis, leave a comment below if how you are, if you are getting on, if you are middle class. We are for now, it's obvious that 10 or 20% at the bottom of the pile of our capitalistic countries, capitalistic globe, we are really feeling the pinch. We cannot access food. We can barely access food. If you go to food banks, it's even worse. And if you have to rely on government help to get energy, it's even worse. And more or less, we don't know where this cost of living is going to go. We're not going how we are going to end up with the situation of the cost of living in the developed world, in the developing world. It's going to go on, and I believe we, as individuals and families, we have to really be aware that the government has closed down. You may still see it, but at policy and agenda level, it's closed down. It's no longer there. That's why there is the cost of living. And I will be saying this often again so that people don't lose track of it. I've been looking at globalization because globalization is actually the strengthening of capitalism, which is actually for the few and not the many. With technology in the future, I believe we will be actually creating wealth and we will be accessing wealth as well. So it's going to be good news, but that's in the future. There will there's likely there will be improvement within the next 10 or 20 years, but that is within the next 10 and 20 years. Now we are facing the cost of living, and globalization and capitalism is primarily responsible for that. If politicians or other people, think tanks can tell you something else, but it's up to you to do a research. We live in the knowledge economy. We live in the information age. It's your responsibility. You're free. Freedom. Free from the state. Free from your parents. Free from schools. There's something called deschooling. This means the schools are shutting down. Deschooling means taking the school apart. I mean, all those things are shutting down anyway because if the rich people want to study because they have money, they can study. But if you are poor, if you have money, you can also study. Because some poor people might still have money, you can study. And student finance is ending. We used to have grants, now we have loans. We used to have subsidized grants and loans, now we don't. Maybe we still have, but you now pay per annum in the UK on average about 10,000, over 10,000 pounds for your course. Before that, recently, student loan or grant, we were only paying in the UK for education, university education. We were only paying something like 4,000, I think. 4,000, I think, a bit about 4 to 3,000 pounds. But it is when it went up, it means the government has withdrawn some help, public funding. That's why we now pay 10,000 pounds. So it's going to go worse and worse and worse. And the way to actually deschool or the universalized university is going to be universalized. You're going to the universalized university. I'll shut it down. The best way to shut public sector down. Public sector is anything which help people who cannot help themselves, like education, shut down hospital, transport, employment will go, because that is also part of the public sector. The private company cannot, and it does not create jobs. Politicians may tell you that, but they are wrong. Simple as that. Private sector only create jobs if they need you. There is no way to create jobs in a country because employment is part of the welfare state. People need jobs. If they don't work, they're going to die. They cannot access food. They cannot access energy. They cannot access health care. Work is critical. It's a livelihood. So the government should actually make that part of the welfare state for those who are poor. People who have to work for a living. And I've already said it again and again because there's something called the middle class. They are so deluded. Sorry to say that. And there are actually so many, 50% almost of the population as middle class. And these are the people who believe they are not poor. They don't believe. I don't think if they believe they are rich. Maybe they do because they have credit cards. They have all these things. And what are they going to do? The government is gone. The public sector is gone. The private sector works for the super rich. That is the nature of the thing. Freedom, yes. Freedom from everything. Freedom from your employer. Your employer do no longer have to tell you what to do because you don't work for them anymore. So what are you going to do? You have to work for yourself. How you're going to do that is your responsibility. Because if you're free, you have to be responsible for your life. I've said this over and over, and I also promise I will be saying it over and over in this video. And I'm going to look at globalization. We have been looking at globalization as a trigger of the cost of living, because globalization is an extension of capitalism, of privatization. It's going to go global instead of national and local. That's what globalization means. Everything is going to be global. Whatever it is, technology, medicine, any institution is going to be global, including those who protest against capitalism, those who actually don't want the private sector, socialists, or the ghost of socialism. Because these are actually history. They are in our memory now. They are the best place for socialism to go is actually the museum. The sooner socialists realize that, the better. Socialism is gone. If you don't like it, that means the 90% of the people are on their own. The government is no longer helping them. Go on the government website in the UK, around the world, your government websites, look at the information, there is help. But if you start reading, it's so complicated, in my opinion, because I've been reading it. I've been looking at all these materials. So I know, even for me, I have a lot of experience reading complicated materials. And government policy, to be specific. I know how to read government policy. Understand it. Even for me, I have to really take hours and hours and hours just making sense of one logic. You see, one logic. Because there will be information here, information there. You have to really spend hours and hours to pick one logic, policy logic, to implement it. Maybe to find what the kind of help is available and how to get it, what it means to get it. What if you don't get it? Have you got right to it, or it is discretionary? Discretionary means the authorities do not have to give you, you don't have right to it. It's up to the council, to the local authority, up to the government to give you. These are actually now the kind of criteria, the conditions for help. A lot of them used to be by right. Now it's not by right. That's what discretion means. They can decide to give it or not to give it. You cannot appeal against it. You cannot take them to court. But if it is not discretionary, if it is an entitlement within the statute and other instruments, you can, if it is in terms of procedure, you can actually challenge the government if they don't give you housing, don't give you whatever. Because sometimes we talk about benefit without thinking about housing. We also don't think about food, because the government intervened in the market to maintain to control. We can afford food now because the government is actually helping farmers. The government, as soon as the market takes over, like it is taking over now with the cost of energy, because we didn't used to feel problem with energy because we were not allowing the market to do certain things. Now we are allowing the market to determine the price of energy and food, which means going forward, because the government doesn't want to regulate them, and it is not going to be funding them to provide services. The funding now available from the government is actually capital and infrastructure. Services are no longer being funded adequately, at least adequately, because they want the system to actually close gradually. That's why there's some help, and those help are actually temporary and they're symbolic, and it's so difficult to get it now. You may not even get it if you try. Sorry about that. So I'm going to look at um, this material to illustrate what I started earlier in relation with the other programs. In terms of looking at globalization, globalization is so important because what we know locally is going global. Let us look at food security, and let us look at this material. It's online, and just go through it. It complements some of the things I've been talking about. Um, Food security. So globalization is associated with a more efficient system of food production. That is a claim. So efficiency actually means globalization is associated with a more efficient system of food production. Now, efficiency means cost cutting. You cut cost. You use machine. You use mechanization to produce food, and you use countries with cheaper cost of production. Like you can use Africa to produce affordable or cheap food, organic food even. That is the global sense of food security. This is because crops are grown in countries with optimum growing conditions. Like there are certain food will grow in certain areas, so you choose and pick around the globe which food to grow where. If you do a research, which they do, which they have the resources now, Africa has been instructed to build infrastructure and capital instead of services, public services. So the IMF and the World Bank is funding African countries to actually produce, to provide roads and bridges and seed technology and do research and technology like food, soil technologies, soil studies, and which rice grow where, and which seed is actually can be adapted to grow in places where there is not much water, which actually can withstand drought and diseases and pests. So these are the kind of things that I talk about. And so this improvement causes an increase in the world's food supply, which encourages improved food security. That is an argument. I think it is valid. I think in technology, I think with globalization, you can pick and choose. Say in Israel, Israel is a desert, but they are the second. I think they're the second biggest growers of fresh product like fruit and vegetables. I mean, how can you do that there? You growing things. China is growing rice in the desert. Gobi Desert is the second biggest desert in the world after Sahara Desert. The biggest desert in the world is Sahara Desert in North Africa. So with technology, you can now grow fresh product in desert. That is a good thing. And that is the benefit of globe, because world without borders, you can actually shift capital faster because the borders are relaxed with globalization. That is actually the argument. I think that is good. It's a good thing. And what is not good is actually if the wealth grow, if the growth of food produce is not really distributed. I mean, if the poor cannot access it, then there's going to be a problem. But I want to contradict myself because I was the one who said technology is going to set people free from poverty, which I believe globalization is going to accelerate that. But I also produce a caveat in my arguments, in my propositions, that if we use technology for war other than for peace, then everything we are going to do within the global estate, with the global enterprising, is going to be futile. Because if we cannot learn culture, like I said, within the objectives or even the proposition of what I call the cultural economy globally. I decided to term it the new cultural economy. That is, yeah, I mean, just leave a comment below and let me think what you think of those terminologies. I think they work well for me to try and illustrate these points as best as I can. And if you think it is good, then let me know in the comment below. And like I said before, I subscribe to this channel because I want more people to be involved, so that I get more information from people, I get more knowledge from people participating in this channel, or so that I get good feedback, more feedback. The feedbacks I get now are really fantastic. The more, the merrier. So let us do this, and let's see what we can do. And we're talking about food security, looking at this material. The political movement Brexit was considered a step back in globalization. It has greatly disrupted food chains within the UK as they import 26% of food produce from the EU. That statement is very clear. Britain import 26% of food produce from the European Union, and Brexit disrupting trade in the first instance. In the second, disrupting free movement of perhaps goods and services, in addition to actually limiting free movement of people, among other things. I think Brexit has been a disaster for globalization, to say the least. To say it's been a setback, a step back, is also true because of Brexit agreement, the Brexit deal, as it came to be known in here in the UK. Brexit deal actually promoted what now is actually a relationship, a new relationship, political and legal relationship with the European Union, which Britain allegedly, but actually at the same time left Britain, known as Brexit. Brexit was done under Boris Johnson, Johnsonian conservative, under the right-wing political initiatives in Britain. I think it was terrible. I think it was one of the worst things the Conservative Party did to this country is Brexit. They created it out of political opportunism, and it was wrong. It was actually crafty, and it backfired. And we are still dealing with the problem now. And if it did anything to Britain, create a lot of economic and financial problem to the British people, especially the poor. 10, 15, 20% of people suffered the worst. They always suffer more. Even during COVID, the poorest, the very poorest always suffer more. Cost of living, the very poorest. But you see, there is coming a tendency of crisis upon crisis because of capitalism, because of marketization, because of globalization, which, although it is good, I think the way it is being implemented is not very good, because people are suffering because of change needlessly, including the cost of living. The cost of living should not exist in Britain even for an hour, because there is money in this country. We can solve the problem in a day. But because the government doesn't have a system of helping people anymore, the system is gone. Under capitalism, socialism is dead. Socialism used to distribute wealth. They used to have a government with mechanisms to help. I'm not saying government cannot improve on helping people. Yes, they can. But under capitalism, with government intervention, which is going to be a strategic approach, with government actually producing policies, policy objectives, but it's not really without affecting the overall agenda of privatization, of capitalism, capitalistic globalization, as it were. So this is what it is. This is a figure. The statistics: 25% of food produce were being imported from the EU, and and the reason actually the Conservative Party created Brexit because they wanted to improve their political capital. The people of Britain are so accustomed to listening to who tells them anybody who tells them foreigners are creating problems. See, Britain as a country have been fighting for the best part of its generations and generations. It has been at war. Their instincts are to actually fight foreigners. That's how they have lived. That is their political culture. Militarism. Have you ever heard of something called the British Empire? If you are an African, there is a British Empire is taught in schools. I don't think they teach it in Britain, in schools in Britain. I think because British Empire has now turned into one of the worst sources of embarrassment to the country. It's something the country can be rightly ashamed of because it was one of the most evil things Britain ever did around the world. Not just Britain, but Europe and the West later on. But the rest of the world, the developed world, they developed through violence. And that's what imperialism entails. Empire. Globalization is part and parcel of that. And if we don't do anything to treat globalization, it's going to be another empire. How can we create a system where only a few, 10% can access wealth? The rest get nothing. We need to treat our system global or local. This is what Brexit became. It became a terror, and the Conservative will never really recover from Brexit. The country will never recover from Brexit. And Britain is actually in Europe with the Brexit deal. That's what the Brexit deal was, to keep Britain in Europe. Because what actually the Conservative was hoping that they were going to win elections if they tell the British people it is the Europeans who are actually creating poverty in the UK. How can the Europeans create poverty? How can foreigners create poverty in Britain? Because they should have told the British people we are privatizing the economy. We're shutting down the public sector. That's why there is poverty. They blame foreigners. They blame immigration. They blame immigrants because they know the people will listen. I mean, if you're a human being, you don't want foreigners, people you don't know around you. We are animals. We are territorial. I mean, it's so easy to antagonize the population. If you look, the Russians are coming to the UK. Like now in Ukraine. In Ukraine, all the Russians think Ukraine are their enemies. Because they're foreign. They are taught politically, politically, culturally, that Russia is a sovereign state, it's a territory, and everybody should fight to death to defend their territory. That is an illusion. We are a global country. We are we are under globalization. Why should nation states fight? Because of ignorance. They are not literate politically. They are illiterate. That is what my video. Hopefully, I'm not saying it's going to make you literate, but it's going to hopefully it's going to sow a seed in your head to try and be aware, so that you look for your literacy in this video. I would love that to happen, but if it doesn't happen, if you can't really get literate, if this video cannot help you, we are beyond creating an awareness, I'm cool. I hope if it is not doing it now, I hope going forward, this channel is going to help you to gain political literacy. Especially globalization. I've been telling people on these videos in this channel that learn at least something, it doesn't matter how little it is, know something about globalization. And Brexit is part of globalization because people who are traveling into Europe, into Britain, from Europe, from around across the globe, because part of the packaging of globalization has been that borders restriction is going to be relaxed. I've discussed it on my other videos. There is going to be less restriction. There's going to be relaxation, freedom of movement of people, of goods and services, of capital. People are supposed to come to Britain to invest more easily, or vice versa. People who go out of Britain, going to Africa, going to any other world. That's the idea of globalization. World without borders, a global village. Everybody are going to be like one big happy family. Except if we cannot address the problem of injustice, social injustice coming with capitalism, we cannot be anything big. We may be big, but we to be happy, I don't think so. Because if those who are doing well may be happy, I don't know. Because what is wellness? If you are wealthy and probably not happy, then you're still looking for something. What is it? If you are a multi-billionaire, if you're a millionaire and you're still looking for happiness, what is missing? Culture. Like I said, you need a cultural economy for the rich and for the poor. Because the poor want to be rich, the rich be no, the poor want to be happy and rich, the rich want to be rich and happy. So we all want the same thing. I'm not saying cultural economy is going to help us. If we can learn it today, cultural economy, if we can learn cultural economy today, then if we did that to within the next 10 years, everybody is culturally conscious. Everybody is culturally literate. They respect each other. They respect themselves. They respect their property. They respect other people's property. You cannot be a thief. You cannot steal a property of someone you respect. That is disrespectful. And that is a type of cultural illiteracy. Violence. You cannot actually steal somebody's property. That is violence. You cannot actually even punch somebody. You cannot fight somebody. That is violence. You cannot rob anybody of anything. You cannot actually keep somebody else poor when you are rich. That is violence. That is cultural violence. Inequality is a form of violence. It's a cultural violence. It's produced by cultural illiteracy. Because we don't know what we're talking about. We don't know what we're doing. And so the change has to happen culturally for peace there, for there to be peace right now and going forward. The sooner we begin to realize these things, call it whatever you like, but we need self-respect now. We need our culture back. We already have our economy, but we need our justice, economic justice, social justice back. We look at Norway as an example. Norway's limited crop range advocates globalization on food production, on availability. These are some of the things we can look at Norway. I don't know what it's. Norway is so fantastic. Because I remember Norway in Africa when we were students. We used to get food. Free food. Norway is so unique. I don't know what Norway does, which the rest of the world don't. We used to get free food from Norway, my friend. Relief aid. We are students. Pre-cooked food in tins, chicken, fish from Norway. I still remember that. I think even during when we got relief aid, I think we got some food. Leave a comment below if you're from Africa. If you remember Norway. So Norway's limited crop range advocates globalization for food production. Norway's limited crop range advocates globalization. I can't understand this sentence. Production and availability. The northernmost country in Europe requires trade with other countries to ensure food population of food population food. Wow. This is a really difficult way to write. I'm not going through a material and I have to really decipher what they're trying to say. So they, like what do you say? Population food demands are made to ensure. Yeah, I get it. I get it. Yeah. The northernmost security a country in Europe requires trade with other countries to ensure population food demands are met. Yeah, the population who demand food, as you are, the demand for food in Norway. See, the food, Norway is so remote. This material is saying Norway is an example of a beneficiary of globalization because it depends on on food produced in other countries. It actually depends on food exports imports. That is actually a classical example of a country almost having a net benefit due to globalization. I think that is a good sign. And long live Norway. And the degree of self-sufficiency in food production is around 50% in Norway. Food sufficiency, self-sufficiency. It produces self-sufficiency for food is actually 50%. Is that good or bad? How about the other 50? Self-sufficiency means you produce your own food by 50%. The other 50% is important. Therefore, we are ending this video here. We have seen globalization. We have seen capitalism, which is actually the creation of wealth, which is also the closure of socialism. Socialism means the public sector. In an economic term, it means when it is closed, we can no longer get help from the government. What is left is now the residue. And we are going forward with less and less state and more society. And the capitalism, the cost of living, in my opinion, is here to stay. I'll be doing more video on the cost of living, looking at the problem and how it is caused. If you need immediate help, that is called emergency. It is provided by the government, but it's not enough. But if you're struggling, you have to go online. Government website in the UK and government website in your country, especially in the developed country. I don't know about developing countries like Africa, but in Africa, you probably will find help as well. Find out, if not, speak to your MP, speak to your local leaders, national leaders if you can. If you can, form a campaign group, but be careful in Africa because there's less freedom of expression, less freedom of association. The level of dictatorship there is more virulent, if you like that terminology. Thank you for watching my video. Thank you for subscribing. For those who have subscribed, please subscribe to the channel and support it. Thank you. Good night. Bye bye.